ready to start our time together today with this cut from my son's CD, Meditation. There's the logo up there and the name of the album and his name. You can Googleify it and find it. That is the song Waiting. And the song Waiting, if you listen to the story of the instrumental, is all about the transformation in what we want to call liminal space. Liminal space is the most uncomfortable space in the world. It's the space between what we know and what we don't know. It's the space we step into that is disorganized and uncomfortable and takes us into a place where we are of unmet expectations and assumptions that are blown up, and timelines and familiarity. And this is the place that I find myself in. I've got to be honest with you guys. My energy level, my ability to handle the amping, consistent infusion of truth, revelation, news, controversy is at a low ebb. And I am in a liminal space, and I have been here for quite some time. And I want to invite you into that space. I want to invite you into the space where what you don't know, what you can't count on, what you can't perceive, you don't understand, what feels unfamiliar to you is actually a place of worship and surrender. In the story of the lady who comes in and pours the oil on Yeshua's feet and then cries and takes her hair and wipes them, her absolute emptiness becomes her worship. I believe our emptiness, our lack of answers right now, our lack of surety, our lack of understanding, our lack of a place to say, this is what it's going to look like from here. I know what to expect. This is how it's going to roll. This is how it's always rolled. I believe can be a super profound space for us right now, especially in the fear-free living arena. You see, for most of us who have struggled with panic, anxiety, and depression, it's been the seeking of control that we have attempted to harness to bring us into some place where it's safe for us to lay our head down at night, it's safe for us to show up, to be seen and known, is in the space of control. But I don't find that the space of control is the place of deepest worship and deepest intimacy. I find the liminal space. I find the empty spaces. I find the negative space on the canvas, the place where there are the deepest possibilities. And so right now, I'm in that place. I got a cold last week, so I spent my whole weekend with folks who knew all about it and came and hung out anyway, in a place of moving into relationship and then into a feeling of great emptiness and weakness. Enjoying moments of God's goodness and then toggling back to great weakness, fragility, emptiness, whether it was because of just feeling run down. But it's like, I'm a person of vision. Anybody who watches me, like did you guys like the Dream Farm Radio episode on Thursday? You know, by the way, if you go to dreamfarmradio.org, you can sign up for these free weekly episodes, incredible music, and it'll actually expand your creative liminal space to hear the kind of music that these musicians put out. It will give you a deeper heart, I think, of appreciation of new ways to think, new ways to wire your brain, and new ways to hear worship sounds. To me, right now, the most profound worship sounds are coming out of classical music. They're coming out of jazz sounds. They're coming out of hymns. They're coming out of poetry. They're coming out of liminal space where I have nothing more to offer but what I don't know, what I don't understand. Now, is that because I believe we've lost and I don't think there's a prophetic destiny on our nation? Not at all. It's just that I have no way to feel it around me like a blanket. I have no way to grab what is coming and pull it to myself in some sense of comfort, of normalcy. Right now, what I feel is, I feel exposed. I feel tired. I feel vacant. I feel uh, weak. I feel fragile. But I want to tell you something. Now more than ever, I don't feel afraid of that. And that's what I want to invite you into. This now and not yet is the kingdom of God. This is the actual reality of what is called the Olam Haba and the Olam Hazeh, the world now and the world to come. Paul talks about this, the world to come. The idea that we are all these things in heaven, that we are seated with Christ in heavenly realms, that we're made righteous. We have all these present realities of our authority, our identity, our family intimacy, what is set forever in heaven, that is ours to plunder now on the earth. And then we live in a now but not yet. A kingdom that we bring here, but isn't necessarily always manifesting now, the Olam Haba, the world to come. And this is the liminal space that the believer lives in, the now and the not yet, the here and the not here. The I am good, but I am empty. The I know God is with me and we're headed there, but I feel so very fragile. I feel so very empty. I feel fatigued. I feel these things. And there would have been a time, my friends, and I just want to encourage you that being in that place of the unknowing and the evanescent and the misty would have intrigued me but terrified me. Like knowing beyond the veil, there are these things that are drawing me into the something more, right? Like there's this something more for us. This something more of what God is doing and who He is. And yet we have this treasure in earthen vessels. So I don't know if you relate to me. Maybe you're just up for the fight and you're just really getting your adrenaline rush now from all of the hearings and the Twitter posts and the this and that. And you're just really in there. And more power to you, man. Because I see the body of Christ like that formation of birds heading into the wind. And we take our place, moving toward the front of the V and then circle back in to let someone else kind of take up that wind shear, and so we can ride, in the trail, in the space of someone else going before us. I'm staying faithful, and there are prayers of agreement. I'm like, yes, Lord, that's where I'm standing, that's where I'm agreeing. But I think part of learning to live fear-free is learning to be really emotionally honest. And when you're empty, now this is a now and not yet. Am I empty? I have the fullness of Christ. But in my humanity, I also feel a vulnerability, a fatigue, a weariness, an emptiness, a sigh of, you know what? I can't add more to what I poured it all out. I poured so much into everything, running up into November 3rd. And guess what? This week, been at this for years. Yeah, Lady Grace. Actually, I felt good enough to make some new plans for some increase in what we've built here in our community over the past few months. But I'll tell you, it's like taking a step and then feeling an energy drain. Taking a step, but moving forward into some new ideas. I'm a visionary person. I also realized that there is a fatigue to the prophetic. First of all, I could see where things were going back in January with the virus. I knew it then. I knew. And people are just now catching up to what I knew and saw back then. That creates prophetic fatigue in someone who can see trends. And then there's prophetic fatigue of just so many darn prophetic words right now. What a great problem to have. But you know what? I told the Lord, I said, I almost feel like there's so much information and so many words, and believe me, I'm listening to the ones that are building up my spirit, because I think that's important. Spirit, always, you want to take care, right? You want to steward your soul, your mind, your emotions, your will, your spirit, your body. But there's almost a sense in which all of the information, all of the argumentation, all of the resisting that I'm doing All of the prayer and the prophetic has left me with very little space inside. And I need space, and you need space. And you need to be able to step into a space of unknown and leave your fear behind. To be able to step into a place where your Father knows you and He doesn't need to use your weakness against you. He doesn't need to use your prayerlessness against you or your flagging energies against you or anything against you to say, I gotcha. And I want to invite you guys into fresh healing, because if the unknown is particularly terrifying to you right now, it's probably because somewhere along the way you learned that if you weren't in control and if you weren't up on the latest and you didn't have a plan and you didn't have a way to compensate for the sickness around you and the people around you, you were going to get hurt and you were going to get shamed and you were going to be alone. The cheese stands alone. That people in your family might have rejoiced in finding out all the things about you that were unfinished and undone and unprepared and unready. Or kids on the playground sussing out a weakness in you. Something ugly about you, something funny about you, something that was easy for them to congeal around to get control, right? This is a time for us to embrace what we don't know in the deepest part of our heart. I believe that I do know in my spirit and in my faith what God is doing in America. I do believe in all those things, but there's a present reality of how that does or doesn't look to me and what it does and doesn't feel like to me. And I have to be honest and step into that place of fatigue and weakness and overstimulation and lay my fear down and learn to be nurtured in the liminal space of my weakness. Can you do that with me? Can we do it together? There's so much fear of the unknown, and we normally jump immediately to our solutions and our control to make it better. Sometimes we're jumping even to our prayers out of a space of that deeper fear of losing control. Sometimes we're jumping to our Twitter feeds out of that deeper fear, what if I don't know? Sometimes we're jumping to some very good things out of a deeper fear of not being able to just be helpless, empty, weak, fragile. Now, we do understand that in God there's this other reality, but we have, again, all of this treasure in earthen vessels. And this is a time of waiting. This is a time of deep worship that comes when you lay your control down and you let God show you that He has no need to shame or humiliate you, to point at you, to take you down a peg, to leave you stranded in all of your glorious weakness. It's a beautiful thing. This is where the woman cries, pours out her alabaster box, her tears, pours it on Yeshua's feet. What does she have left after that? No money, no status, no options. Because if Yeshua isn't covering her, she's screwed. If there's not something He's offering to her, she's empty. She's utterly given it and poured it out. On some level, I feel like that. But maybe even too spent to be crying the tears. Just kind of like an alabaster box broken up, just going, I don't have anything to offer. What can I say that hasn't been said? What can I pray that hasn't been prayed? How can I resist that I didn't just resist last week? How can I add in many ways? I'm not sure I know there's a winding, a fresh wind that comes in our sails. But I think it's okay to just be in the unknown and letting God minister to us in the deeper places where we are so deeply uncomfortable when we don't have revelation as control, information as control, fighting and twittering as control, prayer as control, making things happen, getting, doing the, fighting the good fight as forms of control and not necessarily forms of faith. And it can be mixed. Have you noticed that? That sometimes our deepest acts of faith, they're mixed together with our humanity. Of course they are, and thank God that He shares that with us. But I want to invite you, especially those of you that are particularly triggered and anxious right now, I want to invite you into that liminal space between two realities where I believe God can meet us really powerfully in that quiet silence of emptiness that creates a vacuum for more of Him. That's where I feel like. I feel like right now I'm in the middle of being vacuum sealed. maybe I'll get a little lift. Having things just sort of sucked out of me. And from my experience, I can only tell you intuitively that has traditionally made more space for Him. I'm not the cure for cancer. Are you the cure for cancer? I'm not the cure for cancer. You may be getting a very, very profound calling for certain actions right now. Go to the front of the class. I will applaud you. I will stand with you. I will be in agreement with you. And when the time is right, I will circle around into similar actions and activities. And so will some of you who are in the tired place, in the liminal place. And this is a season where God can meet us in those places where we have been so afraid of the unknown, what we couldn't quantify, what was going to look so different. Don't you feel like even when we get the answers to what we're standing for, it's going to look so very different than any other decade, than any other season? I don't think we're ever going to be the same. I don't think America's going to be the same. I don't think my next decade is going to look anything like my previous decades. Don't you get that sense? It's one big, huge feeling of the unknown. So perhaps you ask the Lord right now, what is your deepest pain with not knowing and feeling weak and incompetent, uninformed, left out, left behind, sidelined, made fun of, being the stupid one, being the one who wasn't always prepared, right on the mark? Can you take a few moments in this hour, in this time, and simply ask the Lord, what are some roots of your deepest panic over the unknown? And then I want you to simply be in that place, that space between knowing He's good and not knowing how it will turn out, and inviting Him there to bring restoration. Can you ask Him to heal a memory that comes up for you? Lord, here's my pain. Take it from me. I receive your healing. What lies have I believed as a result of this? What have I agreed with? How much control did I seize when I believed these lies? In what areas? It's a beautiful thing to be, the scripture talks about being on like a child in its mother's breast. David talks about that. There's a warrior. There's a guy who didn't sit around in his hands. There's a guy who went out and said, I'm going to secure the land and, fight for my borders and get everything God told me. And yet there were moments when he talked about being like a weaned child on its mother's breast. And what is a weaned child like? Do you remember when you were a kid and you cried so hard? Afterwards, you were like, like that. It's crazy. Kids cry that deeply and, convulsively. And then they can't hardly breathe. Do you remember that? And yet in that, when there's that final, and maybe there was an experience like that when you were that convulsively upset and afraid that needs some healing. But the idea that when that is said and done, and I realize I've poured it out, I'm in the unknown, I don't have any more tricks up my sleeve. I may not feel like I have any more prayers to pray today, any more posts to post, any more revelation I can even pour into myself, any more energies, any more projects, any more brilliant ideas to fix things. That's how I feel right now. It's like, wow. But do I have a growing capacity for more of him in all of that? I think so. And I think you just might too. And this is important because if we don't pay attention to the deeper watering through the spirit of the soul, we can run fast into our battles, into our warring, into our faith, into our inauguration 2020, into our country taking back, and be dry as dead men's bones for the new season. We're going to need hydration, aren't we? We're going to need refreshing. And I have a feeling, honestly, I'm just going to tell you this. I have a feeling that December is going to be a bit of an ebb for me, a quiet space. And I have a feeling there's something God breathed, perhaps for you as well as for me. Some of you, maybe you're on the forefront now, so go for it. We're applauding you. But, when you're busy, when you're focused, when you're project driven, when you're fixing things, when you're fighting things, you can sometimes not know for many months how very dry you are inside and how empty. So we're in the unknown. Let's let God address the fears of what we don't understand, what it's not going to look like, and even what our victory will look like, and what it will require of us in the new season to be the leaders and the victors. We're used to being the opposition. We're used to being the ones that are constantly banging at the door and saying, the underdogs. What if we're going to be the overdogs for a while in many ways? That requires a lot of refreshing and nurturing and the sap needs to run, doesn't it? For that new life coming out of us. So, yes, that's right. In this process of Advent, yeah, I need a new Advent. I need a new coming. A new, what is it? Oh my gosh, the word, for him becoming flesh. I'll think of it later. The idea of the inauguration, that's not the word. You know what I mean. Somebody really smart put it in the chat. Starts with an I, pretty sure. So anyway, I'm going to play this song, Waiting, one more time. And if you're in a place of discomfort, as I am, not only about in my emptiness, but also in some of the activities and things that I know are coming for me, I need to be able to be in that space between and let God meet me there. And I'd like to invite you into that too. So, incarnation, Rebecca, that is so good. Yes, I need a new incarnation, right? Do you need a new incarnation? I think that's a great thing to be thinking about for the next few weeks. And I'm also not somebody, that's right, Lady Grace, I'm also not somebody who plays games and gets on to talk to you just because I can. And there may even come a time over the next couple of weeks where I go really quiet. Because if there's not something coming in and fueling and feeding, I'm not particularly interested in just wasting your time. But I don't know. That's the thing about the unknown. So much we don't know. Will you invite God in your deepest panic over what you don't know to meet you and turn that empty vulnerability into a deep worship? There's grief, by the way, in that place for the woman who poured everything out on Yeshua's feet. Grief. And when you come to that place where there's need to be healed, there's usually grief. Can you let God into the unknown of your grief, of what lack of control brought in the past? That's a beautiful thing. How about we share the moment of this little 3-minute song called Waiting together. And we'll do something that scares us together and be in the unknown. By the way, just to tell you, FYI, if you want to get Mrs. Amazing and the Seed for your kids, you can go to mrsamazing.com and you can get the book, an autographed book for me and a free CD, or the 29-day adventure. If you use the word wonder, you can get $5 off that. But it's a really cool gift for your kids. Kids maybe 10 to 14, super important read-along family thing because there's deep stuff you want to talk about your kids with. Everything from plant biology to God's design for male and female to what do you do when a kid gets sucked into the void and the heart that you've wanted to see grow in them actually dies. What do you do with that? How do you deal with that kid? What happens to that kind of child? Kind of cool. All right, you guys. Thank you, Andrea. And also, if you want to do coaching and stuff, go to subscribestar.com, Julie Lavender, because you can be a regular coaching client of mine. Just subscribe there, and also some other neat things that I offer to my subscribers. In any event, let's listen to this piece together. Let's wait in the space of the unknown as we, in the name of Jesus, release our deepest panic and anxiety over what we absolutely cannot even wrap our minds around yet.